They say poverty rubs off with a dress like that. John's fiancé, apparently, didn't like the wedding dress I had made. He went as far as to trash it, posting it on the internet with bad reviews to tarnish its image. But he didn't stop there. He paid others to write a massive amount of negative comments about our company. Because of this, my company has been swamped with handling complaint calls. If left as it is, this could negatively impact our work. So, in an emergency meeting, I decided to start doing business with a well-known company. On the wedding day, to get back at John, I urged him to check his cell phone. He was shaken. What's happening? Contracts were being canceled en masse at his company. I couldn't let him off for demeaning my dress, troubling Alice, and spreading bad reviews about our company. We will thoroughly get back at John. My name is Ryan. I'm a man who just entered my 30s, working at a wedding dress manufacturing company. Just an average person, my growing waistline with age is a concern. I know I should exercise for my health, but work is too hectic right now. Especially since the wedding dresses I've been making have gone viral on social media in recent months, doubling the orders. Initially skeptical, starting SNS for the company turned out to be more effective than expected. Thus, while the company is growing its profits, I've been spinning in busy days. Thanks to this, my life revolves around thinking about wedding dresses every day. As a child, I had no interest in wedding dresses. Even when I did think about them, I assumed they were made by women. That perception changed due to an incident in the first year of middle school. Seeing my parents' wedding made me want to create attire that embellishes people's precious memories. My parents, being poor, couldn't afford a wedding initially, but managed to have one years later, thanks to the kindness of an elderly man living nearby. He was a wedding planner and wanted feedback on a new plan he had devised. That turned out to be the reason he approached my parents. Looking back, having a wedding without spending tens of thousands was a stroke of luck. Our family's financial situation is better now, but back then, I had to work right after middle school due to our hardships. I decided to work at a wedding dress manufacturing company after graduating from middle school because I couldn't forget how happy my mother looked in her wedding dress. During the season of vibrant autumn leaves, I was working in the company and spoke to a female colleague. Maybe we should change the color combination here a bit. Understood. I'm sorry to trouble you with this when you have your own work. It's no bother at all. The person I was speaking to is my younger colleague. Her name is Alice. She's sitting at her desk, intently staring at the computer screen. She's also in her 30s, a classmate from middle school. But after graduating, she went to a fashion-related vocational school. Since she joined a company after gaining various specialized knowledge at school, she was a younger colleague, even though we were classmates. The client has specified a color for the lace, so we should consider that in our design, right? Right. The customer's request is paramount. It's a once-in-a-lifetime occasion, so we want to make a dress that they'll love. This reminds me of our middle school days. After school, we'd brainstorm various clothing designs together. When I was designing wedding dresses, others would mock me, saying, "Wedding dress, even though you're a guy," but she wasn't like that. When I asked why she didn't mock me, she said, "There's no gender in loving something." I was attracted to her in middle school, but my first love never came to fruition. It seems she has a fiancé. I've tried to learn a lot since I started vocational school, but I still have a long way to go. I'm taken aback by her voice as she speaks to me. She seems to be struggling with a big problem lately. She often repeating the same mistakes or forgetting what she needs to do. As a colleague working in the same office, I want to help her if I can, but it's personal, so I can't get too involved. "I wish you'd talk to me if you are having trouble," I said. but I wonder if that time will ever come. As I watch her and think, a bug flies. It flies in from nowhere, apparently wanting to get out. It keeps hitting the window glass. It's painful to watch, so I open the window to let it out, and then Alice speaks to me. "You're kind. You were helping a cat near the office the other day too," she says. She's talking about something that happened a week ago. I was about to head home when I heard a cat meowing from a tree near the office, so I got curious. Turns out, the cat couldn't get down from the tree, so I brought a ladder from the office to rescue it. It seems Alice saw me doing this. I don't think it's a big deal. That cat might have been able to get down from the tree on its own after a while, I say. But I think the cat was still anxious, so it was good that you helped it out early, she replies with a smile. Seeing her smile makes me feel a bit shy. While we're talking, her phone vibrates. Alice picks it up from the desk, checks the screen, and her expression darkens. She thought it was a message from a client, but it wasn't. "What's wrong?" I asked. After hesitating for a few seconds, she slowly starts to speak. "Well, my boyfriend has been saying some mean things lately," she says. "Mean things, even though he's dating you?" "No, not about me, about people at work." She has a fiancé named John, who's in his 50s and values education highly. He's seen as an elite director at his large company because of this. He often tells Alice not to associate with people who didn't go to college. By the way, John graduated from a prestigious university. I heard from a colleague that he used to only hang out with smart people in university. Because someone from our company graduated from the same university, I had heard about him before. Alice looks down at her phone, which vibrates again, with a complicated expression. Why would he say that hanging out with people with lower education makes you dumber? She wonders. Maybe she's received another message like that. Since there are quite a few people like me who started working right after middle school at our company, maybe he's worried about that. It's ridiculous. Just because someone didn't finish high school doesn't mean they're not a good person. You, me, and everyone else here are not bad people, she says. Alice. Sorry, please forget I said anything. I just decided on a wedding date, so maybe I'm just worried about everything. She says with a downcast look. I can't come up with anything comforting to say. Somehow, it doesn't seem like Alice and John are a good match. Despite the age difference and differing values. Why did she decide to get married? As I ponder Alice and John's situation, time passes. During this time, I've made several wedding dresses. It was chaotic at first, but I've gotten used to it with experience. The number of orders hasn't changed, but now I can handle my work more comfortably. In the midst of this, Alice asks me for a favor. She approached me during the break with a formal attitude to talk about her wedding. So, you want me to design the wedding dress you'll wear, Alice? Yes, I've always wanted to wear a wedding dress designed by you. If I'm going to wear one for my wedding, I want it to be yours, she says. I'm flattered to hear that. It's genuinely satisfying to be appreciated. The responsibility of contributing to such an important moment in my classmate's life is a big pressure, but it also motivates me. However, I wonder if she has discussed this with her fiancé, John. It seems Alice read my expression. I've talked it over with John, and he agreed to let me decide if I'm so willing, she says. If he's okay with it, then. Alice genuinely wanted to wear a dress I designed, but there seemed to be another motive. I didn't want him to keep looking down on people from our workplace. I thought if he saw a beautiful dress, he might change his mind, she explains. So that's why you asked me to design it, I see, I said. When Alice reached out and grabbed my hand, I couldn't help but feel a jolt of surprise. It reminds me of the innocent feelings I had for my first love in school. Of course, I'll pay for it. Could you please design it? She asks hesitantly. But I wanted to do everything, not just the design. I believe the best results come from one person handling the entire process, and I wanted to do everything I could for her. No, I'll take care of everything. You're my friend, and I've been looking out for you. I want you to wear something truly special, I insist. But I think your modesty is a virtue, but is not what you need right now. This is an important moment in your life. You shouldn't have any regrets, I told her. Alice has always been like this. Choosing the cheapest item even when I offered to treat her, or only taking one piece of candy when she could have taken 10. Just because she didn't want to take away from others. There's no need to hold back for your wedding. It's once in a lifetime, I said. You're right. Could I ask you to do it, Ryan? I confidently assure her. You can count on me, tapping my chest. It's an honor to contribute to the start of my dear friend's new life. I should be the one thanking you, I said. Thank you so much, Ryan, she replied. So, from that day, in addition to my regular work, I started on Alice's wedding dress. Though it was challenging, the motivation was different because I knew the person who would wear it. Creating something for someone I know felt fresh since I had never experienced it before. Completing this wedding dress would teach me a lot for my future work. But at that time, I didn't know. Alice was enduring a lot for a marriage she didn't want. And I didn't realize she didn't eat much during breaks. That day, she went home and had a long talk with John about the wedding. Later, I heard John didn't want to invite us, her colleagues, to the wedding. He said people with lower education are surely lacking in class, and Alice had a hard time convincing him. The dressmaking process went smoothly, and a few months later, it was finished. When Alice tried it on, it fit perfectly. She looked the most radiant I had ever seen her. In the company changing room, wearing the newly made wedding dress and looking at herself in the full-length mirror, Alice's face lit up. It's wonderful. Thank you so much, Ryan. I'm glad you like it, I replied. It's so beautiful, I'm sure he'll have to let go of his prejudices. Thank you for all your hard work, she says, tears in her eyes. Seeing Alice tear up with gratitude, I chuckle and say, you're overreacting. This is how she reacts even before the wedding, so I can only imagine what the actual day will be like. But I don't feel bad at all. It's a fresh feeling to have someone I know appreciate something I've made for a personal occasion. Afterward, Alice carefully folded the dress to show it to John. After bringing it home, she planned to try it on in front of her fiancé again. When Alice first asked me to design the dress months ago, I had a feeling everything might just work out. But it seems I was too optimistic. That night, a storm of negative reviews swept through an internet site. The photos posted were of the dress I made for Alice, but they showed it dirty, with bugs and trash on it. This sparked people, who weren't even customers, to write all kinds of untrue things, causing the company's reviews to spiral down. Arriving at work the next morning, my colleagues were furious over the comments on that site. Complaints about not being greeted when passing by, or that an employee is interacting with someone with bad behavior. What does that have to do with our work? Are these even true? The person posting claims they ordered a dress, but that's a lie. The photo they posted isn't one of our dresses. The names mentioned are from a different wedding dress company. These are employees from another company. It seemed the situation had worsened overnight. As I was trying to figure out what to do, Alice arrived at work. I'm so sorry, everyone. It was John. She had already seen the reviews. She was apologizing profusely, her face pale. No, Alice, it's not your fault. You were so happy yesterday, you couldn't have expected this to happen, I said. Though the colleagues accepted her apology, allowing the moment to pass, we couldn't let the company's reputation continue to fall. That afternoon, we decided to cancel one appointment to gather in the meeting room and think of a response to the reviews. So far, we had received only a few complaint calls, but they were starting to increase, potentially delaying our usual business. In the serious atmosphere, we brainstormed strategies together. During this, Alice seemed determined to take responsibility. "This is my responsibility. I have an idea. Please let me handle this," she said with a strong resolve. No matter what we said, she wouldn't be swayed. So, I decided to invoke the idea of shared responsibility. "Then, I'll help too," I said. "A senior should bear the burden of a junior's mistake." I couldn't let her face this alone. As a colleague, I need to teach a lesson to anyone who bullies my dear colleague. First, we needed to understand why Alice was engaged to John in the first place. The more I thought about it, the more I felt something was off about the two of them getting married. The next day around noon, I visited a well-known company in the area to solve the issue. A renowned company familiar to many residents here. Upon explaining my visit at the reception, I was directed to a spacious conference room. Inside, a man in his 60s waited for me. Mr. York, the company's president. The person who looked at me with a sharp gaze was one of the adults who had watched over me since I was a child. I often visited Mr. York's house as a child, where he would entertain me. "It's been a while. I hear you are having some troubles." Mr. York greeted me with a gentle smile, happy to see me. Despite my happiness, I knew this wasn't the time for reminiscing due to my current situation. "It's been a long time, actually. I've been facing some challenges with a colleague." I began, summarizing recent events. Mr. York listened intently to my explanation, offering his full attention. After I finished speaking and took a moment to breathe, Mr. York began to speak. "Firstly, as a neighborly elder, I must say you've had it tough. When you enter society and start a business, you're bound to encounter troublesome individuals occasionally," he said. "Thank you. Have you experienced something similar, Mr. York?" "I've lived for 60 years and managed a company. Naturally, I've had my share of experiences." Living a long life surely brings a variety of experiences. From Mr. York's heartfelt tone, the hardships he faced were evident. He sighed deeply, shaking his head before addressing me again. "I'd like to help, but as someone who leads a company, I can't act on personal feelings alone. You understand that we can't spend time on mere consultations, right?" "Of course," I replied, acknowledging his position. Mr. York had always been kind, but he also understood the importance of discretion. Now that we were both adults in society, I couldn't simply rely on our neighborly relationship unconditionally. I prepared myself to make a proposal to Mr. York. "Mr. York, I'm interested in doing business with your company," I said. "Let's hear the details." Typically, such matters would be handled by the sales team, but today was an exception. I had explained the situation to my company's staff, and it was decided that I would handle this negotiation. Partly to resolve Alice's issue, and also for mutual benefit. Our sales department had long aimed to engage with Mr. York's esteemed company, but had never succeeded. Therefore, a change in approach was decided upon to make a new appeal. I proceeded to explain our proposed business terms to Mr. York. "That's the proposal. Would you please consider it? This company deals with high-quality thread. Using this thread to create wedding dresses would undoubtedly result in superior products." Considering Alice's situation, it was clear that establishing a connection with a renowned company would be beneficial. "Understood. Let's proceed with a deal between our companies," Mr. York agreed. "Really? Thank you." While I was relieved at the success, questions lingered. Why had it worked this time, when all previous attempts had failed, after just one meeting? It was unlike Mr. York to make decisions based on personal feelings. I hate to ask, but why have you decided to have a deal with us now? Our company's attempts at negotiation had previously been unsuccessful, I inquired. It's because I appreciate individuals who work hard, he replied. Excuse me. Mr. York, with a smile, explained to it puzzled me. From our conversation earlier, I sensed a great passion for wedding dresses. It was clear you spend your days deeply engaged with them. Perhaps that's why. Though I had indeed been preoccupied with dresses to recent business, I wondered if that was really enough. Sensing my thoughts, Mr. York continued. It's simple, yet important. You've demonstrated dedication to providing quality products to your customers by earnestly engaging with the dresses. That's what I deemed you a trustworthy business partner. Having no previous sales experience and never having been evaluated in such a manner by a business partner, I felt awkward yet flattered. Filled with happiness and embarrassment, I managed to say, "Thank you." After finalizing preparations for a comeback against John, the wedding day finally arrived. Though not listed on the invitation list, Mr. York was also invited to the venue. However, there was no sign of him yet. Perhaps there had been some trouble. While I wondered what to do next, I witnessed Alice doing something astonishing. Normally, she should have entered the venue after the ceremony had started, but she appeared in a tattered wedding dress. It was the dress I had made, but it remained as it had been after being defaced by John. The guests began to murmur among themselves. Soon after, John arrived at the venue, dressed as a groom, looking flustered. His attire was perfectly normal, making the contrast with Alice's appearance strikingly evident. "Alice, I was looking everywhere for you, and to find you here." It seemed he had been searching for her, panting as he loudly scolded her. "Why are you wearing such a dress? What happened to the one I prepared?" But Alice, undaunted by John's attitude, stared back at him defiantly. This seemed to intimidate him, showing his anger. "I'm sorry for not wearing the dress you prepared, but I had always planned to wear this dress, hadn't I? But that dress was made by a high school dropout. It's not suitable for someone as beautiful as you. I want to wear the dress my colleague made for me at our wedding," Alice stated firmly, though her feelings didn't seem to reach John. "Before you defaced it, that dress was beautiful, regardless of the maker's education background." Hearing Alice's words, he scoffed at the dress disdainfully. "Such a dress only brings poverty. I disposed of it so that you, being kind-hearted, wouldn't have to wear it." "How could you say that? It was made with so much effort." "So what? This isn't child's play. Effort means nothing if the customers aren't satisfied." The venue fell silent as the two argued. Among those gathered at the venue, there likely wasn't a single person who wasn't focused on these two. Alice narrowed her eyes and glared at John. He hadn't expected such defiance from a bride just before her wedding. John faltered and stepped back. "Even if that were true, it doesn't justify ordering a dress from someone else when you've already asked someone to make one." "What?" "I looked into it after you defaced Ryan's dress. I found an order for a wedding dress from another company on your computer. You never intended for me to wear Ryan's dress." Hearing Alice's shocking revelation, John's face turned pale. "No, it's a misunderstanding. Listen to me," he pleaded. But she showed no mercy. Alice raised her voice so everyone in the venue could hear her clearly. "I asked you multiple times if you had any specific requests for the dress, yet you, who said I could do as I liked, criticized the finished product. Isn't that wrong?" "Stop. Don't say any more. It's almost time for the wedding." The atmosphere in the venue was changing. Those who had been expressing their congratulations were now looking puzzled, and some looked John with disdain. Alice continued to reveal facts unknown to the guests. She exposed John's deliberate sabotage of the dress, his negative online reviews, and his attempts to bribe many into giving my company bad ratings. When John, at his limit, tried to silence Alice by force, Mr. York arrived. "It's not becoming of a groom, about to be married, to forcibly silence the bride," he said, his voice calm but carrying. Mr. York, with a commanding presence, approached us with measured steps. "Sorry, Ryan. I'm a bit late from the time I said I'd be here. I couldn't overlook a child who got hurt on the way," he explained. "It's okay, that can't be helped," I replied. "I appreciate your understanding. It reminded me of when you were young, bringing back some nostalgic feelings," Mr. York shared, lightening the tense atmosphere with his casual conversation. "You're not recalling any embarrassing stories, are you?" "Don't worry. I only remember the time you wet your bed and cried after your mother scolded you," he joked, blurring the line between sincerity and humor. His words seemed to relax those who had been anxiously watching the unfolding drama. While it was important to stand up to John, we didn't want to leave the guests with any trauma. I had to thank Mr. York's experienced handling of the situation. Regaining my composure, I stood in front of the astonished John, who was asking, "Why is Mr. York, the president of a renowned company, here?" "What, you got something to complain about?" "No, but I think you should check your phone right now. Is your company okay?" "What?" Caught in the midst of chaos, John likely never expected to hear such a thing. Stunned, he started checking his phone with a look of confusion on his face. He turned pale seconds later. "What's happening?" He was likely receiving notifications of contract cancellations from various companies, all orchestrated by Mr. York. "Your company has been undermining rivals in various ways, but it seems your behind-the-scenes efforts were too sloppy," Mr. York revealed. "No way." I felt bad for the victims, so I meddled a bit. "Though, for you, it might not seem like much. Just an old man conducting some investigations and sharing the results with those affected by unjust bad reviews." Mr. York's company excels at monitoring the movements of other companies. Perhaps this is influenced by his own belief that he possesses no special talents. Claiming no knack for trends or business opportunities, he is compensated for his shortcomings by scrutinizing the actions of other companies. Maybe that's why he's so concerned about young people who are struggling despite lacking talent. Mr. York fixed his gaze on John as if testing him. "Well, what will you do?" Had John sincerely apologized there, Mr. York probably would have forgiven him. Alice, though not marrying John, would likely not have grown to dislike him any more than she already did. But clad in his groom's attire, John chose not to do so. He twisted his face in anger and rebuked Alice. "It's your fault. You're the one who went crying to Mr. York. Do you never consider reflecting on your actions, John?" "I'm not wrong, am I? What's wrong with taking down a rival? After all, in this world, whoever takes advantage of someone wins. Working hard only makes you a fool." Overwhelmed by anger, John seemed to have lost himself. As he advanced on Alice, I intervened to stop him. "I shouldn't have engaged myself to someone like you." "How can you say that? Don't you love Alice?" "Love her? If I knew she was such a nasty person, I wouldn't have dated her." His abusive words were unbearable. I didn't want to leave him there any longer. "If I had known it would come to this, I wouldn't have cornered your parents' company." Then I remembered the story Alice had told me after our meeting in the conference room. Her parents ran a company that suddenly started receiving bad press. It seems John reached out to help Alice and her family then. That was the reason they started dating, but the initial cause was unimaginable. "I thought if I did you a favor, you'd easily fall for it. I was deceived. I didn't know you'd be such a hassle." I couldn't stand to listen any longer. I grabbed John's hand, trying to drag him out of the venue. "Don't hurt her anymore. The situation you're in isn't anyone else's fault but your own doing. John resisted, trying not to be thrown out, but then Mr. York roared. Enough with the poor grace. A loud voice that seemed to come from his gut made the air tremble. The voice echoed throughout the venue, making even someone who hadn't done anything wrong like me want to shrink away. If you can't admit your own mistakes and blame others, you can dream on about growing, go back to the start and come back again. Having never been yelled at in his life, John sat down with a pathetic heap in a daze. With his courage gone, he crawled out of the venue. Afterward, John broke off his engagement with Alice. The last time Alice was seen, she looked haggard from dealing with her company's bad reputation. It seems the wedding incident had long-lasting effects, and a year later, John's company went bankrupt. Having lost his job, he moved back to his rural hometown and rarely went outside. Rumor has it, he spends his days feeling small and insignificant. Meanwhile, we began trading with Mr. York's company. We were able to offer even higher quality dresses. With more work coming in, we became busy again but managed to get by with new hires. Alice, carrying a big trauma from her relationship with John, gradually started to regain her energy. Lately, she's been showing more smiles, and it seems like her heart's wounds might fully heal sooner rather than later. If she decides to have a wedding, I'd like to make her dress. Assuming she agrees. If I said I was your first love, would you date me? What? Just kidding. Please continue to support me. Yes. Become a dependable colleague and help me with work. At that time, I couldn't have imagined that a few years later, she and I would get married. And she would wear a wedding dress as my wife. I'm utterly disappointed in you. These words from the department head, Lorraine, pierced my ears. As I cleared my desk, I felt the cold gaze of my female boss and heard the snickers of those around me. I, once a promising new graduate, never imagined stumbling like this. Lorraine, who was the cause of it all, smiled maliciously. I heard that your wife even dumped you. She served you divorce papers the day after the personal change, didn't she? What about it? Just thinking how pitiful it is. Lorraine chuckled mockingly. I glared at her briefly, lifting a cardboard box filled with my belongings. My wife was no longer at home, leaving only the divorce papers in my possession. She took all the furniture with her, and even our savings. I guess it was the sign of my failure as a husband. My transfer to a rural backwater was due to harassment from my new female boss. Though Lorraine often sneered at me, I never expected to be blamed for the work mistakes that she made. Blamed for them, I was transferred to a branch office in the countryside. My ex-wife, whom I married right after university, left me, probably thinking I let her down. While packing up my things, I was approached by my colleague, Jordan. I'm going to miss you around here. Well, there's nothing I can do. I'm no longer needed here. Then, there must be something for you to do in the new place you're going to. Maybe. Thanks for everything. See you. I left my old workplace with all my belongings, and soon after that, I moved to the rural town I was relegated to. What a joy to have such a young guy join us right at the start of the year. Welcome aboard. Cheers. On the first day of work at the branch office, everyone welcomed me, even throwing a welcome party in the meeting room. The treatment here was so different from what I received at the head office. Man, there are only older people working here, barely managing to use the modern technology. We can type on Word, like we used to do on a typewriter, but that's about it. Do you even know what a typewriter is? Yes, I do. Now you can show us how to use these new phones too. Taking photos and videos, sending emails. I'd love to learn about apps too. As we were talking over drinks, I couldn't help thinking, seriously. Indeed, there were hardly any young people living in this remote town. and I was surprised to find most employees at this branch office were rehired retirees. It's nice to be employed at this age, but we're not tech-savvy. We're having trouble using computers, and there's no one to teach us how to use them. That's right. We can't even use Excel. We still work with pen and paper, so whatever we do, it just takes a long time. We can find anyone with computer skills, even if we advertise for a part-time job. I see. I wondered if I could really make it in a place like this. Although I was feeling uneasy about working at this branch office, I had no choice but began working, welcomed by everyone. The next day, I found myself teaching computer basics to seniors at work. Let's see. First, basic chart creation in Excel, and perhaps the function used in the advanced course. I printed out meticulously formatted manuals on A4 papers for everyone. By using the manuals, I hoped to prevent the situation where they would start saying, "Oh, I asked about this before, but I forgot." The elderly staff here were forgetful, but eager to learn by taking notes. I made the manuals as clear as possible, with large diagrams and illustrations. The old computers at the company were a challenge too. I negotiated with the headquarters to arrange newer computers through a rental service. There shouldn't be any more excuses for not being able to do office work due to Excel issues. I'm just curious, since nobody knew how to use Excel. Who was handling the office work before I came here? Puzzled, I asked my colleague, Henry, about it. It was Emma. Emma. She's the daughter of Max, who lives nearby. She got a job in a city after graduating from college, but the company she was working for went bankrupt due to the recession. She couldn't find another job, so she came back home. She worked here for a while as an office clerk, but then she had to quit due to some family issues. Well, with what happened, it couldn't be helped. What happened? It's nothing. Nothing. Without saying anything further, Henry returned to his desk. Why did she quit when there was no other work in this town? What could have happened? For a long time, I was wondering about this girl named Emma. Some time had passed. Then on one weekend, the weather suddenly changed. One minute it was sunny, and the next we had a downpour. I couldn't even hang the laundry outside. I was thinking, looking out the window, when someone visited the old house I was renting. I hurried to the door as the doorbell rang repeatedly, and there stood a woman, drenched in the rain. "Hi. What happened? You're soaking wet. What's going on?" I couldn't help but ask the woman. "Hi. Sorry to bother you. My father has gone missing. Have you seen an elderly man in his pajamas around here?" "No, I haven't seen anyone." Hearing that, she looked down and said, "I see." I handed her a towel and asked, "Your father is missing." She nodded silently to my question. "Have you contacted the police?" "Yes, I have. They're searching for him as we speak." As if on cue, the public address system announced a missing elderly man. The missing person is Max Saran, 58 years old, of medium build. "Wait, Max. Are you Emma?" "Yes, that's me." I was surprised. The woman in front of me was Emma, the one Henry mentioned the other day at the office, the former employee of our company. The missing person was her father. Then I explained to her that I was working at the company where Emma used to work. She seemed a bit relieved and started to share her story. She told me about her father's dementia and the need for care, which led her to quit her job, that it was not easy to make ends meet, but somehow she was managing with the government support and her little savings. But lately, my father started wandering off frequently, and I can't deal with it on my own anymore. "I see. I've talked to his care manager about placing my father in a care facility." With a sigh, she continued, "But I'm not sure if it's the right thing to do, putting him in a care facility. I feel guilty, especially after he supported me through college. Maybe I should continue taking care of him myself." Tears welled up in her eyes. She must have been thinking about this alone for quite some time. "I see. That must be really tough." Thank you for sharing this with me. Oh, I should be going now. Are you going to continue looking for your father on your own? Yes. I can keep bothering others with this. You should change out of those wet clothes, even if it's warm outside. Oh, her face turned red. Embarrassed, she hugged herself and looked down. Oh, no, I'm sorry for my appearance. Just then, the emergency broadcast resumed. Max has been found safe. Thank you all for your assistance. Oh, they found my father. That's great to hear. Yes, I'm so glad. Thank you, she said with a smile. I found myself worrying about her and impulsively offered my help. If you like, I can come with you to pick up your father. I can bring my car right now. But that'll be too much. We've just met. I'm an employee of the company you used to work for. I heard about you from others. Given the situation, let me help you. Okay, thank you. She reluctantly agreed to my offer. After that, I drove her to pick up Max. Exhausted, Max was sound asleep in the hospital bed. He had been found with a bruised hip and was scheduled to get some tests done the next day. For precaution, he was admitted to the hospital. I ended up driving him home. It must be really tough, taking care of your father all by yourself. Not at all. It's something everyone does. During the drive, we talked a lot. She seemed anxious about her future, as she was unable to work but had to care for her father. I'd prefer to stay at home as much as possible, she said, looking vulnerable. Hearing her story, I came up with a suggestion. But I'm not sure if I can manage it. I'm already overwhelmed with my father's care. It might be better to consider placing your father in a care facility sooner. What if something like today happens again and he's not found? That's true, but at least in a care facility, the risk of him wandering off would be significantly reduced. I know. I'll think about it. Thank you for your advice. I might have been interfering, but I thought something needed to be done for her before it was too late. Shortly thereafter, I decided to bring up a matter at the company. I made a suggestion to the company that some of the computer-based tasks should be outsourced. The proposed contractor was Emma. I'm anxious about balancing work from home and caregiving, but I'll give it a try. Having some income will make life a bit easier as well. I agree. I'll do my best. The company quickly approved the proposal, and Emma began assisting with our office work. She also started searching for a care facility to take in her father. Continuing caregiving without a job was financially challenging, and to avoid repeating her father's missing incidents, it seemed necessary to find a facility for him. I'll miss living with my father, but I've realized it's selfish of me to keep him at home, she said with a wistful smile. Some time later, a place for her father in a facility was secured. Located next to the hospital in town, it provided reassurance of immediate medical care if needed. Emma told me about this with a smile. Hearing this, I said to her, "That's great. Your work is highly praised at the company. Now, would you consider coming back to the office to work with us? There's no need for you to work from home anymore. Teaching everyone about computers is quite a task for me." Laughing, I made my offer, and she responded with surprise, "Really? Is that okay?" "Yes, in fact, the company is keen on rehiring you. What do you think?" "Yes, I would love to accept that offer," she answered enthusiastically. No, thank you for joining our team again," I said in return. Emma was rehired and returned to our company. "Looking forward to working with you again, Emma. We're so relieved to have you back. With a young presence, the workplace will be livelier." "I'll do my best again." Seeing her sparkling smile, I felt a flutter of excitement. Initially, I wasn't sure if I could make it in this rural town, but I've started feeling that I would be fine. I suddenly remembered what my old colleague, Jordan, said to me before I came here. "There must be something for you to do." Yes, there must be something for me to do here. Feeling a sense of destiny, I resolved to give my best in this town from now on. She managed to get into our company despite disappearing right after high school. Didn't even go to college, and now you're just a temp. That's laughable. I unexpectedly ran into a classmate from high school at my new workplace, someone I had cut ties with due to their disdainful attitude towards me. Although I didn't attend college due to certain circumstances, she seems to be under the mistaken belief that I am just a temporary employee. Then, with a wicked smile, she said, "I'll take extra good care of you starting today," so I decided to respond with a smile as well. No, that's my line. Saying that, I watched as my classmate fell into despair. My name is Alex. I must admit, my family is quite wealthy. My father runs a company, and my mother is a homemaker. Being an only child, my parents spared no expense in my education, sending me to private schools and elementary school. I was often the leader in my classes, probably because I was decent in both academics and sports. I attended a prestigious K-12 school, so naturally, I progressed to its middle school. In middle school, I continued to play a leading role in class and even served as the class rep. Thanks to my parents' support, I maintained top grades and enjoyed a fun school life with friends from my elementary days. Then, one day, a new student transferred into my class. I'm Elizabeth. I was living in France until last month, so speaking English is still a bit difficult for me. Nice to meet you. Elizabeth, a returnee from France with a French father and American mother, was undeniably beautiful, instantly becoming the center of attention in the class. The class was buzzing with excitement. "Elizabeth, your seat will be next to Alex. He's the class rep, so if you have any trouble, feel free to ask him for help," said our teacher, Mr. Miller. Realizing I was being handed all the responsibilities, I jokingly said, "Mr. Miller, isn't this a bit of a dump on me? Alex, as the class rep, is more approachable for someone your age. All right, let's start the morning meeting. Elizabeth, please take your seat," he replied. Elizabeth sat down next to me. "Nice to meet you," I greeted her. "Nice to meet you too," she replied, making me smile. Elizabeth was incredibly beautiful. Her uniqueness, coming from France to this private middle school, quickly made her the center of attention in our class and popular throughout the grade. I think her innocent and adorable personality was one of the reasons for her popularity. Moreover, Elizabeth's English, slightly awkward due to recent stay in France, ended up being considered adorable and further increased her popularity. Moreover, Elizabeth and I turned out to be neighbors. I had noticed a moving truck in front of the long vacant house next door and remembered my mom saying, "The Martins moved in next door." When I first heard Elizabeth's name, I thought, Martin is a common surname, never imagining she'd be my classmate. I discovered she was my neighbor purely by chance, encountering her as we both left for school one morning. Since we were classmates, avoiding her would be strange, so I decided to speak up. "Good morning." Good morning. Why are you here? I live in the house next door." "You're my neighbor." "Jer, seems like it. Want to walk to school together?" "Yes, let's go." It turns out that while Elizabeth often spoke English with her mother at home in France, she still found French easier to speak. "Alex, how do you say this in English?" "It's flower, which means fleur in French." "Flower, got it." Haha, the native pronunciation is really different, isn't it? English is difficult. There's no other way but to get used to it. Let's talk a lot like this. "Sure," Elizabeth replied energetically, and we laughed together. Soon after we started walking to school together, we were teased, "Are you two dating already?" I responded, "We just happen to live next door. Besides, I'm her mentor here." Then everyone in the class seemed to accept it, saying, "Well, that makes sense." That's how we naturally started walking to and from school together. During our walks, I would teach Elizabeth English, and she would teach me French. Her French lessons were easy to understand, and she said, "Alex's English lessons are really clear." Thanks to this, my French improved significantly, and my grades in French rose as well. Gradually, Elizabeth's English also became more fluent. In no time, we were in our third year of middle school, and it was time to think about our future paths. Our school was a K-12 institution, so we could continue to high school and college without changing schools. However, wanting to experience the outside world, I decided to attend a different high school. After discussing with my parents and getting their approval, and with encouraging words from Mr. Miller like, "With your grades, you'll be fine," I passed the entrance exam for the top high school in the county. Surprisingly, I found Elizabeth at the same exam venue. She was also applying to this high school. "Why are you here, Elizabeth?" I asked. "I thought I'd try applying to an external school," she said with a smile. Elizabeth also passed, and we both entered the same high school that fall. In high school, Elizabeth's beauty, accentuated by her mixed heritage, became even more pronounced. She was popular, academically excellent, and always in the spotlight. Right from the start, she was entered into the school's beauty contest held during the fall festival, without her knowledge. Seeing how popular she had become, she started to seem like a distant celebrity on TV to me. It's strange, we used to sit next to each other in class and live next door. As for me, being from the same middle school as Elizabeth, I was constantly asked for her contact information, to pass on letters, and to help set up meetings with her by other guys, which I try my best to avoid. Initially, we went to high school together, just like in middle school, but as Elizabeth became busy with her duties as class rep and started going to school with other friends, we gradually grew apart. Well, I made my own friends too, so perhaps it was a natural divergence of social circles. I felt a bit lonely but thought it was probably for the best since things couldn't stay the same as in middle school. Although we had grown apart, we still greeted each other normally and talked occasionally. We had settled into a relationship of just classmates. After starting part-time work in high school, I made friends with classmates from other schools and enjoyed expanding my world outside of school. In my second year, I chose the liberal arts track and ended up in the same class as Elizabeth, but we hardly talked. Our conversations, when they did happen, were brief, and as classmates, I spent more time talking and hanging out with a few other boys in our liberal arts class and would head straight to work after school. Elizabeth was busy with her club activities, so it was rare for us to interact. In my senior year, I got into a hobby with friends from other schools and started focusing more on that. I'd rather be doing this than going to school, but I have to attend. Honestly, I had started neglecting school, attending only in name and often just sleeping for everything but the lessons. I would sometimes fall asleep even during class, earning scoldings from my teachers. Then, one day, Elizabeth, as the class rep, suddenly asked me, "Alex, what are you doing at such a crucial time in your senior year?" It had been a long time since we had a conversation like this. "Just busy with various things," I replied. "What kind of things?" "Nothing that concerns you, Elizabeth. It's just something I enjoy doing." Hearing this, Elizabeth looked visibly upset. I absent-mindedly thought about how Elizabeth still wears her emotions on her sleeve. "If it's none of my business, I can't say much, but you need to be careful. It will affect your grades and your transcript," Elizabeth warned. "Yeah, I'll be more mindful. Thanks, Elizabeth." Though I replied this way, I continued to be busy with my own things, spending most of my days at school sleeping. We overcame the midterms and finals, and then it was summer break. While everyone else was attending summer courses as part of their university entrance exam preparations, I didn't attend any and spent my time immersed in part-time work. During this period, I rarely went home, so I didn't attend school either. I received messages from Elizabeth and other classmates asking, "Aren't you taking the summer courses?" However, I only replied, "I'm too busy with various things to attend." Then, when September arrived and summer break ended, as I entered the classroom saying, "Good morning," Elizabeth appeared in front of me. "Alex, what do you mean by not attending any of the summer classes?" she exclaimed. "Huh? You were the only one in our class who didn't attend. What were you doing while everyone else was working hard?" I didn't quite understand why Elizabeth was so upset about me not attending the classes, but I decided to be honest about what I had decided over the summer. "I've decided not to go to college. There's something I want to do after graduating from high school, so I'm going to pursue that." Elizabeth looked at me, astonished. "I can't believe it. You're always sleeping in class, and now you're not even considering college. I never thought you were such a slothful person." "Slothful? Going to college isn't everything in life. Besides, I can always go to college if I feel like it, but right now, I want to focus on what I really want to do." "Life isn't that easy. It won't just work out like that." Elizabeth seemed on the verge of tears as she said this. I didn't understand why she was getting so emotional, but I was well aware that life isn't easy. "I know. That's why I'm working hard right now, preparing so I don't fail," I replied, but Elizabeth gave me a sharp look and returned to her seat. After that, Elizabeth never spoke to me again. Later, I heard from her mother that Elizabeth got into a famous national university. It seems that all of my classmates, except for me, got accepted into universities. My teacher, Mr. Anderson, repeatedly suggested, "Alex, you should consider going to college too," but I consistently declined. Eventually, I graduated from high school and left home. 10 years passed, and I was now 28. Since then, I had been following my own path, achieved my goals, and was working every day. And today, I am at my new workplace. I was excited to be working somewhere different from where I had been previously employed. I wondered about my new colleagues, hoping they would be good people. As I was thinking this, "Alex," someone called my name. I turned around to see my colleague, Michael. "Michael, good to see you looking well." "Of course, man. You too." Michael, whom I hadn't seen in a while, playfully slapped my shoulder, and I returned the gesture. "What brings you here, busy as you are? I thought I'd give you a tour of the office." "Really, you?" "Yeah, I'm the most knowledgeable about this place. Let's go, newbie." "I'm not a newbie." We laughed as Michael showed me around the office. Although the company has its own cafeteria, I wanted to see what was around the office. During the lunch break, I walked around and found a nearby cafe. It seemed they had a lunch menu. "Perfect, I'll eat here," I thought to myself. I decided to enter the cafe. After being seated and ordering from the lunch menu, I was checking my phone when, could it be, Alex? I heard my name and looked up to see a woman standing there. She had beautiful features and somewhat resembled Elizabeth, my childhood friend. But it's been nearly 10 years since I last saw Elizabeth, so I had no idea how she might look now. "Why do you know my name?" "It's me, Elizabeth. We were together in high school, remember?" "Really, Elizabeth?" I stood up in surprise. "Yes, I'm Elizabeth. I wasn't sure if you were really Alex either." "I'm surprised you recognized me. I just thought you looked similar," Elizabeth said with a laugh. Somehow, it felt like a long time since I had seen Elizabeth smile. It was not just because it had been a long time since we met, but I felt like I hadn't seen her smile much. "But why are you here?" "Oh, I just transferred to a company nearby today." "Which company?" "Well, do you know Moonworld? That's where I'm working now." "Moonworld? I work there. What?" I had no idea Elizabeth was an employee in my company. It was completely unexpected. Come to think of it, I heard a new guy was starting today. Could that be you? Maybe so. Our company was actively recruiting mid-career hires, so new employees joining wasn't unusual. So, you're a temp then? I heard the new guy was a temp. Temp, me. Elizabeth looked down on me as if she had made some conclusion. You disappeared right after high school, and now you've managed to get into our company. Wait, her words seemed quite sharp. So, you didn't go to college, and now you're just a temp. That's laughable. Elizabeth laughed more and said, from today, as a regular employee and your senior, I'll be taking good care of you, with a mischievous smile. No, that would be my line. I replied to Elizabeth with a smile. What? Sorry, but I'm actually your boss. I'm not a temp. I'm the vice president of Moon World. Elizabeth's mouth dropped open at my words, and after a moment, she said, what are you talking about? Is this some kind of joke? It's no joke. I pulled out my business card and handed it to a still stunned Elizabeth. It read, Alex Carter, Vice President, Moon World Corporation. This must be fake. There's no way. Is this some kind of fabrication? Elizabeth was frantically examining the business card, flipping it over and holding it up to the light. I mean, there's no reason for me to fabricate such a business card. She still couldn't believe it. No, it's true, I said. Just then, I heard, hey, Alex. Today seems to be a day for being called out, and there was Michael. President Thompson. Hey, Elizabeth, you're here too. Having lunch? Yes. Alex, are you eating here? Mind if I join? Michael asked, so, of course, I agreed. Sure, let's eat together. Michael sat down beside me, called the waiter, and ordered the same lunch. President Thompson, this person is our company's vice president. When Elizabeth spoke to Michael, he casually confirmed, yeah, that's right. Alex had been working overseas for us, but we recently transferred him to the headquarters. Did you two know each other? You're about the same age, right? Elizabeth and I were classmates in middle and high school. Wow, really? That's quite a coincidence. Michael laughed. Soon, the lunch Michael and I ordered arrived, and we enjoyed our meal while chatting. Watching Michael and me talk amiably, Elizabeth seemed stunned and muttered, so it really was true. I first met Michael at a fast food restaurant where I started working in high school. He was the same age and we hit it off immediately. One day, I want to do something big, rather than just living an ordinary life. One day, when Michael said that, I strongly agreed with him. I thought living a life of just going to college, getting a job at some company, and working there seemed uninteresting. Looking back, it might have been a childish longing to do something different from everyone else. But Michael and I decided to make our dream a reality. After discussing what we could do together, we decided to start our own company. Since Michael surprisingly liked cute things and curiosities, we came up with the idea of sourcing these items from around the world and selling them. Thanks to Elizabeth, during our school commutes, I had become proficient in French. So I traveled the world sourcing these items while Michael, attending a commercial high school, handled the administrative aspects. Neglecting high school, we prepared for our venture with advice from my father, who ran his own company. As our high school graduation approached, we finalized our preparations, and soon after, Michael and I co-founded our company. I traveled back and forth between US and abroad, collecting goods, while Michael sold them online and in stores. Of course, at first, we faced many challenges and dangers during our trips abroad. We often ended up with products that broke easily or had our wallets and phones stolen countless times. Together, Michael and I overcame these obstacles, and gradually, our company's transactions increased, leading to its successful expansion. We were able to grow our workforce and have brought the company to where it is today. Now, we have branches in both US and overseas, and until recently, I was at our overseas branch. But Michael, the president, said, "Isn't it about time you come back to US?" As a successful young president, Michael was often interviewed by magazines, and he would always talk about me, his co-founder. Since I was abroad, explaining my absence became a hassle for him. Michael suggested we do the interview together. It'd be less of a hassle, but I was starting to miss home and wanted to return to US. So I handed over the overseas branch to someone else and made my way back. Getting used to the work in US, I was relaxing at a cafe near the office after work. As I sighed and took a moment to relax, there was Elizabeth again. She stood beside me, looking like she had something she wanted to say. "Hey, Elizabeth, what's up?" I wanted to apologize to Alex. "For what?" "Have a seat first," I said, inviting her to sit down, and quickly ordered a drink for her. "I'm sorry about the other day. I mistakenly thought you were a temp and made fun of her high school graduation status. Don't worry about it. It was my fault for causing the misunderstanding." The next day, a new temp named Robert actually joined the company, so it was understandable for Elizabeth to be confused. "And in high school, I said you were a slothful person without really knowing anything about you." "Oh, did you say that? Now that I can say it, I've always liked you, Alex." "What, really?" I was genuinely surprised by Elizabeth's sudden confession. "I was happy when you were kind to me after I transferred, and I really enjoyed walking to and from school with you. That's why I followed you to the same high school, but we started drifting apart, right? In our second year, when we were in the same class, I thought we could get closer again, but you were always sleeping in school, and we hardly talked. It felt like you drifted away, and I felt somewhat betrayed. It was all my selfish feelings, though." So Elizabeth felt the same way back then. "I thought maybe if we went to the same university, we could spend time together again, but then you said you weren't going to college, and I got really upset. That's why I said life isn't easy and called you slothful. I regret it now." Elizabeth's voice turned formal towards the end, making me laugh. "And even though you were always sleeping in school, you were always at the top of the class, which I thought. I made sure to stay awake in class in high school, and I didn't want to get scolded for bad grades. Despite how it looks, I did study on my own. My parents said I could do whatever I wanted as long as I graduated from high school, so I kept my grades at least at a minimum level." I reminisced. "Those days were tough, juggling startup preparations, studies, and part-time work. But they were fulfilling. High school teachers don't say much as long as your grades are good. Yeah, but they kept asking me to go to college. Of course, they would. A top student not going to college would be a big deal for a prestigious school. Actually, Mr. Anderson even asked me to persuade you to go to college," Elizabeth said. "Mr. Anderson asked you too. He must have been really desperate." Elizabeth and I then had a lively conversation, filling in the time we missed talking to each other in high school. I noticed in high school how Elizabeth was becoming more popular, and it felt like she was moving away from me. Hearing this, Elizabeth murmured, "I wonder if we wouldn't have drifted apart if we had been more honest with our feelings back then." Maybe. I wondered how Elizabeth would have reacted if I had told her back then, "Actually, I'm starting a business." Would she have supported me? Or would she have advised me to give up on that idea? After a brief silence, "Hey, Elizabeth, how about we start over as friends again?" "What?" I was really happy about your confession. We drifted apart in high school, even as friends, but I've been thinking, I want to enjoy spending time with you again, I said. Elizabeth nodded in tears at my words. "Yeah, let's start over." From then on, Elizabeth and I began spending time together again as colleagues and friends. We went out for meals together, sometimes with Michael and other employees, and even hung out as a group. Elizabeth was just as innocently charming as before. Despite occasional arguments, I enjoyed the days spent with her. Eventually, I realized I liked Elizabeth and wanted to be with her more. The deciding factor was when a tipsy Elizabeth said one night, "The happiest time of my life was walking to and from school with you in middle school." Even when I dated others, I always thought the happiest time was when I spent time with you, she confessed. I was genuinely touched, realizing she had such feelings for me. Since I knew Elizabeth was single, during one of our dinners, I decided to confess. "Spending time as friends, I've realized I like you, Elizabeth. Will you go out with me?" I asked. "Yes," Elizabeth quickly nodded, and we started dating. About a year later, today marks the first anniversary of Elizabeth and my relationship. I decided to propose to Elizabeth today, planning the ultimate classic proposal. The venue is a restaurant with a beautiful night view. I meticulously planned the surprise proposal, coordinating everything with the restaurant staff. Midway through the meal, I excused myself to change into a tuxedo. I thought I might be overdoing it with the attire, but it's a special occasion, so I encouraged myself. Then, returning to our table, I knelt before Elizabeth and said, "Elizabeth, I will make you happy forever. Will you marry me?" Elizabeth nodded, tears in her eyes, and said, "Yes, I'd be honored." Having once prioritized my own ambitions and lost something important, I was grateful for the chance to start over and find happiness like this. Moving forward, I want to make spending time with Elizabeth my top priority. Although I'm still young and might make mistakes in prioritizing, Elizabeth might too. This time, we intend to avoid drifting apart, openly sharing our thoughts and walking for life together,